So let's kick off this module by taking a look at variables. So here we've got a simple ASP.NET web form, and we've just got a header here. We've got a paragraph and a couple of divs to represent simulated buttons. And we can see here that we've applied some classes. We've got lead text, primary button, and secondary button. So let's take a look at our SAS file now. So at the top of this SAS file, we can see we've got these items here, and these are variables. To define a variable, we start off with a $sign, after which we give our variable a name. So here we're creating a variable called primary brand color. We then have a colon, followed by the value that we want to assign to the variable. So in these first three examples here, we're assigning color values to these variables using the RGB syntax. We can also assign a value using a color constant. So here we're just applying the color constant white to the variable called button text color. We can assign other types of values. So here we're assigning two font size values, so 16 point and 30 point to these two variables, base font size and button font size. And here we've got an example of setting a pixel value to a button width. And we can also set multiple values. So here we're setting this button padding variable to 4 distinct pixel values. So now we've defined our variables, how do we use them? Well, we simply use them in place of actual values in our CSS properties. So here we're saying the font size for the body, we're going to set it to whatever the variable is for base font size. So here this variable $base font size will be replaced with whatever the variable value is. And if we hover over these, we can see what they're currently set to. So here we can see the variable base font size is currently set to 16 points. Similarly with the other variables that we've defined, we just use them in place of an actual hard-coded literal value. So here we're making use of the primary brand color variable. Primary brand color variable again. But we're also mixing this in with some static CSS property values. And here we can see in these button classes, we've got a whole heap of variables being used. So let's take a look at the CSS that this generates. So this is the CSS that we're going to include in our default ASPX. So again, we're just referencing the resulting CSS. And we can see in this compiled CSS that the variables have been replaced with the actual values. So here we've got our 16 points. Here we've got one of our color variables. And similarly for our button classes here, we've got all of the variable values used in place of hard-coded values, including our multiple value padding here. So let's take a look at this in the browser. And we can see we've got our heading, our lead text, and our two simulated buttons here. So now we've defined variables, it's really easy to change the resulting CSS by just changing a simple variable. So in this simple example, we haven't got many instances of these variables in use, but you can imagine a complex style file having many uses of these variables. So let's go and restyle our page by simply changing some of these variables. We won't actually have to touch any of the styles down here. We'll just change the actual variable values at the start of the file. So currently, if we hover over this and just hit Control Space, we get this nice little color pop-up, and we can go and see our original color, which is blue. So let's change our primary brand color to orange. Similarly with the important action color, if I hit Control Space, we can see that currently it's set to orange, and we'll change this to red. So it's going to look pretty hideous. We have this secondary action color. We can see that this is set to gray. So let's change this to something hideous again. And we'll leave our button text color white. We can change our base font size, which we're currently using down here in the body. So let's make our font size huge. And we'll make our button font size even smaller. So we'll have massive text and tiny buttons. We'll also change our button width here to make them really wide. Now if I save this SAS file, it will recompile and we'll just get a message here saying, do we want to reload the open CSS file here? So I'll click yes, and we'll go and have a look at our CSS. And we can see now that our CSS has changed. We've got this huge font size, 48, as well as all of the other variables have been replaced with their new values. And if we have a look at this, and just hit Ctrl F5 to force a refresh, we can see now that we get our really hideous looking web page. We've got this massive font. We've got our different colored buttons that are even wider now. So that's how we can define a set of variables by prefixing them with the $sign and then assign values to them. And then whenever we need to change the values in our style sheets, we can just simply change the definition of the value here, and this will automatically replace any instance of the variable that we've used throughout all of our CSS.